Hey guys, what is up? I'm Exteria, and this is how to itemize units in set 13. In this video, I'm going to teach you guys the core items that you build for this set, and a general idea of what to build for each unit. Depending on metas, items can change, but this is the core idea of what you can build on each unit. So with that in mind, let's just explain what each unit builds. Don't worry about the golems here, it's just a divider so you can see easier what I'm trying to show. And we're gonna start off with our main tanks. In the top left corner, I'm gonna put a Mumu here because he's a really strong main tank at the moment. You put items such as Bramble, Warmongs, and Declaw. These items are really powerful because they give every resistance that you would need. Bramble for AD, Warmongs for health, and Declaw for magic resist. This is like the usual tank setup you kind of want to do, but most of the time you can't build that. So you can build items like Protector's Vow, Redemption, or even Gargoyle's Dumbplate. These are good like alternative main tank items you can build, but for the most part, try to build this if you can. And then for the melee carry side item, which is like basically people who are close range, but they do high amounts of physical damage, which is like something like Darius. His items usually consist of like Bloodthirster or even like a Titan's Resolve. There are other alternative items you can build such as Edge of Night, Hodge, or even QSS. It just depends on the situation, but most of the time these are the best items to build, so try to go for this if you can. Next up we got our ranged backline carry items that's physical damage, and I'm gonna show Draven for this. They consist of usually using Last Whisper or even IE. You can use like other ones like Runan's Hurricane. You can use other items such as like Runan's Hurricane, Deathblade. I wouldn't recommend Giant Slayer as a item slam because it's not strong enough in the early game. If you're really desperate, you could do Guard Breaker. So these are fine alternative backline items you can do. That's physical damage. But for the most part, you want to try to aim for Last Whisper and IE. And then lastly, I'm going to show for Lux. And for her, it'll be mostly consistent of mage items such as Spear Sojourn and something like a Death Cap. You can build alternative like AP items such as a Jewel Gauntlet or a Nashor's Tooth or even an Archangel Staff. It just depends what you have in hand. And if you really need the mana item for early game, you can also build something like an Adaptive Helm. Unless you want to play someone that needs blue buff, which is like, for example, like someone that has under 40 mana. A good unit for that would be like Heimerdinger because his mana consists of 40. And the reason why 40 is the magic number for blue buff is because what blue buff does is they have 10 less mana. If they kill a unit, they get 10 more mana. So if you use it on a unit that has higher than 40 mana, blue buff is not a good value item for units that's higher than 50 mana. If not, just use Spear Soldier instead for mana back or the Adaptive Helm. So that's the rule of thumb for playing mages. But yeah, for the most part, it's just basically Spear Soldier and whatever AP items you can build. Mage items are kind of flexible, so now since we can understand the classification of items and for certain units, let's start with our main tank section, which with a Mumu, another good main tank would be Aurelia. She can use the same items as these main tank items I described earlier. And that's basically about it for main tanks for one cost units. And there are alternative tanks where basically they are frontline units, but not too tanky, but you can use decent tank items on them. So an example would be like Singe. You could put items on him such as Protector's Vow is a good like sub tank item because his item is actually really yoked for them. Since it gives him a shield, gives him armor and magic resist, so they don't die as easy. And another one would be because utility wise, Sunfire is a good item for alternative tank items because it does damage for your board and it gives you anti-heal. Or you can do something like Crown Guard on them because most alternative tanks are AP, so this item can actually work well with them. You can put this on main tanks too, like a Mumu and Aurelia, because they do magic damage. If a tank doesn't do magic damage, don't put Crown Guard on them. A good example would be Frontline Jace, because he's a physical damage unit overall. Just putting AP items on him is just not good value, so you don't want to put it on units like him. And the last alternative tank frontline unit would be Stab, because he's just not too tanky at the moment. This concept is only for the current patch, which is basically on release of set 13. Metas can change, so the Singe and Stab maybe could be main tanks later, but this is just the concept for now. And then for our frontline melee carry like Darius, other units that are like him would be for one cost section is Trundle and Violet. Trundle, even though he's a bruiser, his ability is more of a damage carry unit, so putting items what Darius has is good on him. Same with Violet. Violet is more of a damage dealer than she is a tank. So this is the reason why we have to section off melee frontline carries with tanks, because they can't really build tank items and survive. You have to kind of build these items to survive. If worse comes to shove, you can build these gloves on them and it's fine. And then now we're going to move on to our backline carry unit, which is Draven. Another only one cost backline carry unit would be Maddie. She also used IE and Last Whisper, but compared to Draven, Draven uses Rage Blade really well, and for Maddie's case, it would be Spear Sojourn. The reason why those two build different things while Draven uses Rage Blade and she uses Spear Sojourn is because her mana pool is way too big and you want her to play as a caster. Like her mana pool is 120 while Draven is only 60, and Draven you want him to keep autoing because his ability enhances his auto attack, while Maddie just shoots a burst of physical damage. So that's the difference between the two. Gensu's Rage Blade is also fine on Maddie, but I just prefer to have a Spear Soldier on her, just because her mana pool is just too big, right? So I prefer this. And then for our mage carry units, it would be Lux, and other one-cost units like her would be Morgana, Zyra, Vex, and that's basically about it for the one-cost units. This is all the one-cost units we have, and this is how we section off each one. For our two-cost units, for our main tanks, it would be units such as Leona, Rel, and that's it for the main tanks. We got alternative tanks, or like the sub-tanks, and that unit would be such as Set. He can be a main tank later, but right now, in the current patch, he's just too weak to be a main tank. You can't put main tank items on him, it would be bad, but he's more like a AP alternative tank. So you put items on him like Crown Guard, Adaptive, or even Ionic Spark. Like these items are strong on him. Now for our melee carry unit items, it would be someone as Nocturne. They basically use the same items. Kinda do the same thing to be honest. And another unit like him would be like Camille. These two are really similar. So basically just put the items on her as well is fine. And lastly, even though he's a 2 range, Urgot also fits this category because the Bloodthirster, Sterak's, and Titans is actually really strong on him. Interesting unit that I will talk about would be Akali. She is not a physical damage unit, she is a magic damage unit, so her items are a little bit different. Can use Bloodthirster and Titans on her. The Sterak's is a kind of a no-go because it's a physical damage item. So instead, the items you kind of do want to build on her would be like Chill Gauntlet and Hodge. She can use like Edge and Knight, it's fine. Or like I said earlier, you can use Bloodthirster is good on her. Or you can use other AP items like Death Cap or even Crown Guard is good on her. Like she's like different because she's magic damage. But the idea is you can use melee items as well. That's just not Sterak's. Every other melee item is fine with AP items. And then next up, our backline carry unit for 2-cost units would be a unit as Tristana. For her case, you can use Spear Soldier is fine, or even Rage Blade with IE and Last Whisper. Those are fine on her. And the other unit that is a backline carry unit is Zeri. For her, it's mostly Rage Blade, and then IE Last Whisper is fine. So essentially, you could just build fully like just IE Last Whisper and Rage Blade for all 3 of them. The main thing to note is that Zeri, her ability is only on auto attack to cast her ability, so that's the reason why Spear Soldier doesn't work on her. And the reason why Spear Soldier is good on Tristana is because her ability is you want to keep casting over and over, but because she's an artillerist, Rage Blade is good for that. Now we're gonna move on to our mage 2-cost section, and for that it would be someone like Renata. Renata is more of a support unit, but her damage is pretty decent. And the only other like AP 2-cost units that's backline would be Ziggs. So essentially you can build the Spear Soldier and then AP items on these two. And both of these units are not good with blue buff because their mana pool is way too high. So Spear Soldier would be best on them. A unit that I forgot to mention was Vladimir, and he's essentially the same thing as Set. So the items that Set has, it's the same item as Vladimir. Now we're going to move on to our 3-cost units. And for our main tanks for 3 costs, it would be Loris or Loris, whatever you want to pronounce his name, and Scar. Scar is a unique one. You can play him like any style. You can play him like the melee style with these items, or the Kali thing that I said earlier, like AP, like Bruiser. Or you can play him as a main tank, or you could even play him as an alternative tank, which is like the sub tank or alt tank you want to call it. So you can put items such as AP is like Crown Guard, Onyx Spark, and even Adaptive is good on him, but Scar can be either a main tank or even like a sub tank. Either one works. And then for our other sub tank, it would be Blitzcrank and Swain. It can fit with the sub tank items or even main tank items. Either one works. It doesn't really matter. And then the other main tank would be Rennie. Rennie can play main tank items or even melee carry items. Either one works, but main tank is probably like the best on her for now. As I was finishing up the video, I completely forgot about Nunu. And Nunu, you can just put main tank items on him or even alternative tank items like Protector's Vow, Crown Guard. And he's actually really good with anti-heal like Murloc Khan. So that works on Nunu really well. But I just completely forgot about him because he's actually really bad at the moment. For our melee carry units, for 3 costs, it would be Frontline GP. He doesn't really work well as a tank because his ability is basically damage, so Frontline GP, these items are really good on him. And another unit, because he's like an assassin, is Smeech. Smeech is very good with all these items that Darius has. For our backline physical damage carry units, it would be Ezreal. And Ezreal works really well with Spear Soldier because his mana pool is kind of big, it's 60. He's more of a caster too than he is an auto attacker. Because he's an artillerist, technically Rage Blade would be good like Tristana, but for Ezreal's case, Spear Soldier would be better. And that's basically about it for the backline physical damage units, so it's just Ezreal. for 3 costs. Now for our 3 cost AP carry units, it would be backline Swain. This unit actually does a lot of damage if you put him in the backline, but as of right now, he's better as a tank, just for the current patch. Another unit would be Nami, and lastly, it would be Cassiopeia. These units are very good with the Spirit Sojourn setup and whatever AP items you can find. Other units that's really good with Spirit Sojourn because they do magic damage as well would be Twisted Fate and even Kog'Maw. But these units are a little bit different because they kind of built attack speedish, so they're actually good with Rage Blades. And for Kog'Maw's case, you can do Rage Blade or mana items such as Blue Buff or even like Spear Sojourn. They're both really good on him as well. So these two units specifically built a little bit different, but they still use mage items really well. And Kog'Maw's the only one that can use Blue Buff really well, and I lied, even Cassiopeia, because her mana pools are very small. So Kog'Maw, Cassiopeia can use blue buff very well, while the rest of the units can't really use blue buff because their mana pool is too big. Now for our 4 cost units and our main tank, it would be with Mundo. He works really well with these items. Another strong main tank would be Garen, and another main tank would be Alawi. These 3 are very powerful as main tanks, and they can also use sub tank items as well. But for the most part, main tank items is the way to go for these units. And then for our sub tank, it would be Elise. She built more like AP-ish, but for the most part, these gloves for her would probably be the best, to be honest, because she's more of a secondary tank than a main tank. But if you were to build like AP-ish bruiser items, it would be, you know, the usual Onyx Spark, Adaptive Helm, and even Crown Guard is fine on her. Or even Sunfire would be really good on her overall, just because you need some sort of anti-heal on your board. You can just put Sunfire here is fine. And for our frontline AD 4 cost carries, it would be Ambessa and Vi. Basically about it. They built the same items, but the difference is Ambessa is better with Edge and Knight from what I know. But for the most part, you can just build what Darius has on these 2 is fine. And then for our backline main carry units, it would be Twitch. Twitch works really well with all these items that Draven has. And it would be Corki. Corki doesn't really work well with Rage Blade. He's just better with just IE and Last Whisper, and that's basically about it. Because he's a scrap, you can just put a sword on him, and the scrap can just convert it into an item. Or if you really want to, you can just put Giant Slayer on him over the Ginsu's Rage Blade. This Ginsu Rage Blade is way better on Twitch. Now moving on to our mage 4 cost carries, it would be units such as Elise. Elise is actually really good as a backline mage. Like, she does a lot of damage and people don't really use her too often that I see. But she is very powerful with these items, which is Spear Sojourn and whatever AP items you put on her. Another good backline mage would be Heimerdinger. And then like I said like earlier, blue buff would be like the best on him. But you could put Spear Sojourn or Adaptive is fine. And then whatever AP items you could put on him. And then other unit that's really good with mage items would be Zoe and Silco. So these are the units that are really good with mage items. And then for our final unit that we didn't mention here yet would be Echo. Echo is more of an AP frontline carry. So like Akali, you kind of want to build stuff like Jewel Gauntlet or Hodge. Bloodthirster Titans is fine, just not Sterax. Every other frontline item that's carry is fine on Echo, just not Sterax. That's it. When you can build whatever AP items and a healing item like Hodge or Bloodthirster, or even Gunblade if you have to is fine. And then now finally for our 5 cost unit, and we're gonna start off with our main tanks, which funny enough there is no main tanks, but technically Rumble can be a main tank. But he's more of an alternative tank, like the secondary tank, because you kind of want the other units like Alawi or even Rel to be the main tank with Rumble. So basically his items would be better as like an AP one, which is, you know, the Onyx Spark, the Crown Guard, and Adaptive. Or even Anti-Heal is actually really good on him. So I would prefer items like Morellocan would be very powerful on him, or even Red Buff, because his ability is AoE, so you kind of want to have that Anti-Heal that does damage on Rumble, and he just built like full tank after that. And then next up is our 5 cost melee carry units, and technically Jace would be it, but he's better with these gloves. The main reason why Jace would be good is because you get this crystal, and this crystal is basically a good like 3rd tank to have on the board, because you want this to die if you're playing frontline Jace, so you can get the extra benefits from it because it reses if Jace is still alive. But for the most part, I would say to itemize him, the best would be if you want to put damage items on him, you could put like what Darius has, but I would prefer just these gloves as fine because he doesn't need much to like be good. Another really good frontline carry unit would be Sylvica. She's actually just really powerful overall. She has a lot to her kit and just does a lot of damage. And then another strong melee carry unit would be Mordekaiser, but Mordekaiser is AP, so like Echo. You want to put stuff like Jewel Gauntlet or even Death Cap, but Crown Guard would be his best item. And you can put stuff like Bloodthirster or even Hodge, and then the rest of like the melee carry items such as Titans is fine, Edge of Night, and other stuff. Just don't put Sterax on him, and put whatever AP items you can on him, and he's good. Now for our backline 5 cost carries, it would be Caitlyn. and Caitlyn works really well with Spirit Sojourn, i.e. Loud's Whisper. You can do Rage Blade if you want, but Spirit Sojourn is just better on her because you want her to cast her ability as fast as she can. Since her ability reduces armor magic resist, this helps a lot. And another backline carry you can do is Jace. If you put him in the back, it's pretty decent. And same thing with the Crystal, you kind of want to put it in the back because it doesn't really res if you put it in the front line, I think. I could be wrong, I didn't really read it, but from what I remember, it gives you attack speed, so you kind of want to put it in the back. If it does res, just throw it in the front then. If I remember correctly, only the frontline version reses, not the backline. And then another backline carry unit would be Jinx. She works really well with Rage Blade over Spirit Sojourn, unlike Caitlyn. So that's basically about it for the backline carries. And then for our backline mages, which is a really powerful one, is Malzahar. Malzahar is very strong for utility as well because he also shreds magic resist, but the main item you want to put on him is Spirit Sojourn and whatever AP items you can find on him. Same with LeBlanc, whatever AP items you put on her with Spirit Sojourn is all you need. If worse comes to shove, you can just build Adaptive Helm for the two if you can't build Spirit Sojourn, and it's fine. And that is it on my video on how to build units in set 13. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section down below. I'll try to answer to the best of my capabilities. Until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.